there, curious minds. In a world that feels increasingly driven by, well, the unseen gears of artificial intelligence, how much do we truly know about what's happening behind that digital curtain? Today, we're pulling back that curtain for a deep dive into some really foundational work. The Code of Practice for General Purpose AI Models.
That's right. And we're zeroing in specifically on the transparency chapter of this code. This emerged from the ambitious EU AI Act. You can think of this as a crucial instruction manual for AI developers outlining what they need to reveal about their powerful models.
Exactly. And our source material today is a pretty comprehensive document detailing these very commitments.
Our mission today really is to demystify what transparency actually means for the companies creating these cutting-edge AI models. We'll explore how this aims to benefit everyone, other developers, regulators, and ultimately, you, the public.
We'll dissect the specific commitments and, why they're so pivotal for the future of AI.
And before we dive deeper, maybe it's worth clarifying a couple of terms. Things we'll hear a lot, especially for those who follow legal stuff.
Good idea. Like recitals.
Exactly. When we mention recitals, think of them as the introductory bits in EU legislation. They're not the law itself, but they explain the why behind the articles. They give us the context, the lawmaker's intent.
Got it. Context is key. And the model documentation form, it sounds a bit dry.
It does, but it's not just some generic blank sheet. It's actually a highly structured template. Think of it as an AI's technical and ethical blueprint. It's designed to help providers compile really crucial details, the AI's architecture, its training data sources, ethical safeguards, known limitations, potential risks, all that good stuff.
Okay, so it's pretty comprehensive. Right, let's get to the bottom of what developers are expected to share and why.
Let's do it.
So, to start, let's understand the essence of this code of practice for general-purpose AI models. It's laser-focused on transparency. But why is such a detailed code necessary in the first place? Isn't AI innovation something that should just happen?
That's a great question because it really gets to the core intent here. This grand vision for AI, it comes directly from the foundational principles laid out in the AI Act itself,
right
in Article 1. And it's not just about setting rules. It's about some profoundly important objectives, things like enhancing the EU's single market, cultivating AI that genuinely serves humanity, prioritizing our well-being.
And safeguarding fundamental rights against harm.
Right.
While still supporting innovation.
Precisely. It's about building a future where AI is both powerful and trustworthy.
So yeah, not just rules for rules' sake. It's about better, safer, more ethical AI for everyone. But given how pervasive AI is, why this specific focus on general-purpose models? Why not just regulate all AI?
That's a crucial point, and it's quite strategic, actually. These general-purpose models are, as the recitals highlight, kind of the underlying digital bedrock. They may form the basis for a range of downstream AI systems.
Okay, so like the foundation.
Exactly. Imagine one foundational AI model, maybe a big language model, being used to everything from a medical diagnostic tool to a financial advisor, or even critical infrastructure management. The companies building those specific applications, the downstream providers, they need a deep, clear understanding of that foundational model, its capabilities, its limitations.
Right, because otherwise they're building on shaky ground.
Totally. Without that transparency, they'd be building their own systems on an opaque foundation. It would make it incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, to ensure their final products comply with the AI Act, or are safe, or even effective. So it really helps isolate the core source of potential issues right at the beginning.
That makes perfect sense. These foundational models really are the infrastructure for so many other AI apps we see. And to ensure that Bedrock is transparent, this transparency chapter lays out 3 core measures. These are for the providers, or signatories, as the doc calls them.
They have to implement these to meet their transparency obligations under the AI Act. It's structured, and at its heart is that tool we mentioned, the model documentation form.
Right, the blueprint.
Exactly. And this form, it isn't just, bureaucratic paperwork. It's designed as this structured, user-friendly template. It helps providers compile the info in a standard way, making it easier for others to understand. But here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. Not all this information is meant for everyone. Access levels are differentiated.
Okay, so who gets what? It sounds like there are different tiers of access.
Pretty much. It breaks down into a couple of key audiences, each with different needs and different access rights. Firstly, you've got the downstream providers, those other companies building their specific AI systems on top of these general purpose models.
Right, the ones integrating the model, maybe tweaking it for their specific use case.
Exactly. They're trying to integrate it effectively, maybe fine-tune it, and crucially, ensure their final product is safe and complies with the AI Act. So they need specific insights into how the model works.
Okay, that's one group. Who's the other?
Then secondly, there's the AI Office, or National Competent Authorities. These are the regulators. But here's the catch. Information for them is only made available following a specific, justified request. It's not like a free-for-all data dump.
So they can't just go fishing.
Nope. The request has to state the legal basis and purpose, and it's only for items strictly necessary for their tasks, like assessing the compliance of a high-risk AI system built on this foundation. It's targeted access.
Okay, that seems reasonable, but it does bring up a critical point. If companies are sharing core details about their models, what about their intellectual property, their trade secrets? Is this transparency going to stifle innovation?
That's a really valid concern, and the code actually addresses this directly and pretty robustly. The AI Act itself, in Article 78, puts strong obligations on anyone receiving this information. The AI Office, other authorities, they're explicitly obliged to respect the confidentiality of the information obtained. This specifically includes IP rights, confidential business info, trade secrets.
And security?
Yes, and they must also implement adequate and effective cybersecurity measures to protect that data. So it's trying to strike a balance, foster transparency for legitimate oversight and development, but without inadvertently killing innovation or exposing sensitive company secrets to the whole market.
A careful balancing act, then. Legitimate access for legitimate reasons under strict conditions.
Precisely.
Okay, that balance is crucial. Now let's dig into Commitment 1, documentation. This seems to be the real core engine of this transparency chapter, and it's broken down into 3 crucial measures. The first one sounds pretty fundamental, getting the information documented in the first place.
All right, let's start with Measure 1.1, drawing up and keeping up-to-date model documentation. It's quite clear. When a provider puts a general-purpose AI model on the market, they must document, at minimum, all the information laid out in that model documentation form. They're even encouraged to use the standard form in the appendix, which helps with consistency.
So it's not just a suggestion, it's a must.
It's a must. And what's really striking here is that it's not a one-off thing. Signatories have to update the model documentation to reflect relevant changes. That includes updates to the model itself. But here's the kicker. They must keep previous versions of this documentation for, wait for it, 10 years after the model is placed on the market.
10 years. Wow, that's extraordinary in a field moving this fast. I mean, practically, what kind of infrastructure would a company need to maintain that kind of historical record reliably? Especially with models constantly updating or being retired, sounds like a huge undertaking.
It is a monumental task, no doubt, but it's a profound commitment that really acknowledges AI's long-term effects. That 10-year retention, it isn't just regulatory box ticking. It's recognizing that the impact of a powerful AI model can echo for years, maybe decades. Imagine an AI model causing some unforeseen ethical issue or a subtle bias only showing up 5-7 years later.
Right, maybe only after prolonged use in certain situations.
Exactly. Having that immutable audit trail, that complete history, becomes absolutely crucial for forensic analysis, for learning, for accountability, maybe even for seeking justice. It really forces providers to think about the enduring legacy and societal impact of their AI, not just the launch day buzz. It's a huge investment in long-term trustworthiness.
That level of traceability definitely sounds like a serious commitment. Okay, so once that documentation exists, how does it actually get to the right people? That brings us to Measure 1.2, providing relevant information.
Right. So providers must publicly share contact info on their website or somewhere obvious. So the AI Office and downstream providers know exactly who to ask for access to the model documentation or other necessary info. It's about making sure the pathway to getting the information is clear and accessible.
Okay, so making contact is step 1. What information flows where?
Well, this measure really defines that flow. For the AI Office, like we said, info comes upon request within their specified time frame, and it has to be the latest version. This is specifically for their official tasks, like checking high-risk systems built on these models. They need current data for oversight.
And for the downstream providers, the ones building on top of the model.
For downstream providers, they get the information from the latest model documentation that's specifically intended for them. And always, of course, subject to those confidentiality safeguards we talked about. But here's a really interesting bit. Providers must also give additional information, if it's necessary for those downstream providers, to understand the model's capabilities and limitations properly. For integration, and for their own compliance with the AI Act.
Ah, so it's not just the standard form. They might need more context.
Precisely. And this extra info has to be provided within a reasonable time frame, no later than 14 days after the request, unless there are exceptional circumstances.
14 days, that's quite specific. It puts pressure on them to be responsive, doesn't it? Stops developers being held up.
Exactly. It ensures that downstream innovation isn't stalled waiting weeks or months for vital details.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It's a very practical, layered approach to sharing info, getting the right stuff to the right people promptly. And there's even this encouragement for providers to maybe publicly disclose some info, perhaps summarize to promote public transparency, like that idea of an ingredient label for AI training data.
Yeah, that idea of a summarized training content summary, as the Act requires elsewhere, could be really powerful. Imagine having easily digestible summaries of what an AI model learned from. That would be incredibly empowering for users.
It really would. An ingredient label for AI. But, okay, what good is any of this information if it's unreliable, incomplete, or easily messed with? That brings us to the critical third measure. Measure 1.3, ensuring quality, integrity, and security of information.
Absolutely critical. This measure focuses on making sure the documented information is controlled for quality and integrity, retained as evidence of compliance, and crucially, protected from unintended alterations.
Mm.
It's not just about having the data. It's about making sure the data itself is trustworthy.
Because if the foundation docs are flawed.
The whole thing falls apart. Think of it like building a skyscraper.
Yeah.
If your blueprints, your documentation are inaccurate, incomplete, or someone can just scribble on them later, the entire structure is compromised. This measure is basically calling for architectural integrity for these AI models, making sure the bedrock of trust is solid. Unreliable or compromised documentation undermines the whole purpose of transparency.
And they encourage following standards.
Yes, providers are encouraged to follow established protocols and technical standards for managing this information. That promotes best practices and consistency across the industry. Nobody wants an AI house built on, shifting sands or with fudged numbers in the plans.
Right. It might seem administrative, but it's profoundly critical.
Totally.
Okay, this deep dive is revealing some really specific nuances. For example, what happens if a general-purpose AI model is modified or fine-tuned by someone else? Does the original provider still carry the can for the new, altered version? That seems a bit unfair.
That's a very practical point, and the code anticipates it. A recital clarifies this. If someone else modifies a general-purpose AI model, they become the provider of the modified model.
Yeah.
Their commitments under the transparency chapter are then limited just to that specific modification or fine-tuning. It follows the principle of proportionality.
So you're only responsible for the changes you make.
Exactly. It prevents the original provider being held responsible for the entire history and all subsequent changes made by others down the line. It encourages specific accountability for what you add or change. It's a common-sense approach for a modular world like AI development.
Makes sense. And what about the open source world? That's evolving so fast, often developed by communities, maybe harder to pin down one provider. Are they subject to the same tough documentation rules? Wouldn't that stifle that collaborative spirit?
Another excellent question, and it really highlights a thoughtful distinction in how these regulations apply. There's an important exception laid down in the AI Act itself. These measures generally do not apply to providers of general-purpose AI models released under a free and open-source license.
Ah, okay. So open source gets a pass, mostly.
Mostly. It's a carve-out that shows a clear effort to foster innovation and let that vibrant open-source community flourish without, undue burden. However,
There's a big qualifier.
always a however.
Always. This exception doesn't apply if that open source model is considered a general-purpose AI model with systemic risk.
Systemic risk. That sounds serious.
Yeah.
How do they define that? Is it just about how powerful the model is computationally?
It's more nuanced than just raw power, although that's definitely part of it. The systemic risk threshold for open source models is where things get really crucial. It's not only about computational power, but crucially, its potential for widespread, critical deployment and significant societal impact.
So if it's likely to be used in really important stuff, exactly. If an open source model hits a certain scale or capability, or if it's likely to be used as a core component in applications with major societal consequences, think critical infrastructure, national security, vital public services like medical diagnostics, then it falls under that systemic risk umbrella. It's a balance trying to foster open source innovation for smaller projects, but drawing a clear line when an open source model's potential impact becomes significant enough to need that careful oversight and transparency.
A pragmatic way to manage risk without stifling a really important part of the AI
I
ecosystem.
think so, yeah.
Wow, okay. That was a truly detailed look. We've really unpacked the meticulous rules for transparency in these general-purpose AI models under the EU AI Act Code of Practice. It's complex, but incredibly important stuff.
Indeed. We've seen how this code demands structured documentation, how it differentiates access for different players, developers, regulators, and emphasizes strong confidentiality alongside quality controls.
Mm.
It's all designed, really, to foster a more accountable, more trustworthy AI ecosystem, building on that core idea from the AI Act. AI should serve humanity.
And this isn't just, bureaucratic jargon. It's the real nuts and bolts of how society is trying to build trust, enable responsible innovation, and ultimately protect us from potential harms of powerful AI. It really underscores the careful thought going into regulating this transformative technology, making sure that as AI evolves, our understanding and oversight evolve too.
So, what does this all mean for you, listening? As these transparency measures become standard practice, maybe consider, how might we, as everyday users, eventually get a better handle on the AI we interact with daily? Could this lead to that ingredient label for AI models we talked about?
Mhm.
Maybe in a user-friendly format on your phone apps or smart devices. What might that actually look like, and how could it empower you to make more informed choices about the AI you use every single day?
It's a fascinating future to imagine, an excellent thought to chew on. We really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of the foundational efforts being made towards AI transparency. Until next time, keep digging, keep learning.